I, male, 28, am a huge JDM freak. Ever since the first Fast and Furious movie came out, I've fallen in love with Japanese cars. I obsess over them at car shows, and basically, another thing was that my dream cars were all under 25 years old. And anyone who's into JDM knows about the infamous 25-year rule. Cars that are less than 25 years old can't be permanently imported to the US. My dream car, a 1997 Nissan Skyline R33, was going to become 25 years old in January 2022, and I decided that I would save up like a madman for that day. I work hard and make a reasonable amount of money in software engineering, but I will say that my passion for cars is an expensive one. I also have a Nissan 350Z, which I've spent a lot of money on, aftermarket parts galore. And because of that, I'm protective of my cars. My girlfriend, Jess, female 29, has recently started getting into the car scene. So we go on track days together sometimes, and she can drive my 350Z when I'm riding shotgun, but nobody is allowed to drive my Skyline. I bought it in February 2022 by using my contacts in Japan, and since it's been in my garage, nobody has been allowed to drive it. I admit I am quite possessive over the R33. The issue comes from my stepbrother Isaac, male, 19. My mom, female, 55, remarried when I was 18, and her husband has a kid from a previous relationship. I had already gone out to college by then, and I didn't form much of a relationship with either my stepbrother or my stepdad. As long as my mom was happy, I respected my stepdad and treated Isaac like a friend. Now, the problem is that Isaac has been admitted into college in LA where I live. He hasn't been able to figure out a place to stay yet, so Jess and I decided to let him crash at our place while he sorted it out. It seemed like a good idea at first, but he stayed at our place for an entire month rent-free, and it didn't look like he was moving out anytime soon. During that month, I got to realize that Isaac was a really spoiled, lazy person. I didn't have any first-hand experience with it since I lived away from home, but this kid was entitled AF. He didn't do any chores, ate food without replacing any of it, and used my PC and consoles without asking. Even Jess's patience was running thin, but I didn't want to kick the family out onto the streets. I did reach a compromise with my girlfriend where I promised to take on the slack that Isaac was supposed to do, basically meaning I was doing chores for two people. I dread to think what he was like back home. Maybe my mom and his dad put up with it, but no way that this could go on. Before I was able to confront him about it, though, something much worse happened. One day, Isaac casually asked me to give him a garage tour, and I showed him my Skyline and 350Z. He was stoked to see such cool cars and wanted me to let him take one out for a drive. I'm sure the kid's not a bad driver, but these cars make a lot of power, and horsepower mixed with youth is not always the best equation. I said, we'll see about that, buddy. How about for now you focus on your college and figuring out where to live? Since you'll be in LA for a while, I can always take you for a track day later, right? I didn't mind paying to take my stepbrother out for one of these events, but he needed to change his behavior a little before we got that close. Now, when I said he couldn't take the cars out, Isaac tried to keep making excuses and saying he'll be good on the street. But when I didn't change my opinion, he threw a full-on tantrum. I was shocked to see a 19-year-old adult act like a 9-year-old. It ended with him storming up to his room and slamming the door, and me explaining in clear terms that I expected him to behave if he wanted to keep living under my roof rent-free. He didn't come down for dinner either. At around 1 a.m., Jess and I heard the garage door open and the Skyline's engine start. I ran down and saw Isaac peeling away in my car. He got out of the neighborhood, but then I heard a crunch noise down the street. Jess and I drove down to see smoke pouring out of the car. Isaac wrapped it around a lamppost. This frickin' guy had just totaled my dream car. I guess the speed of acceleration got to him and he lost control. At that moment, I called the ambulance and made sure he was okay, but once the adrenaline wore down and I assessed the damage, I was heartbroken. Jess comforted me and both of us were pissed at Isaac. My insurance wasn't going to cover anything since he drove it without my permission. With mods and the condition my car was in, it was worth around $80,000 and I wasn't going to get a single cent of it back. My mom and stepdad also came down to LA to see Isaac since he had broken his arm. But when I brought up the value of the car, they acted like I was a monster for not caring about my brother's life. The thing is, whenever I speak to Isaac about paying me back for the car, or at least working out a way to pay me back, he acts like he doesn't have any remorse and says that it's not his problem. I told him that if that was the case, I would have to press charges against him since he did steal my car. Of course, he told his dad about it, and now my stepdad is saying that if I press charges against him, I would be cut out of the family inheritance. My mom does think I should be paid back, but she thinks it isn't fair to have the conversation right now since Isaac is still recovering and he's just a kid. I was pretty certain I'd be doing the right thing by pressing charges, but seeing my parents act like I'm doing something so cruel is having me second-guessing myself. WIBTA for pressing charges against Isaac? Update 1. I decided to consult my bio dad on the matter. He's someone I look up to, even though my parents split quite a while back. He's always been active in my life and isn't biased when it comes to problems like these. He also thinks that it might not make sense to press charges against Isaac, but for a different reason. A 19-year-old is getting ready for college and has no savings and is immature. Even if I do get him arrested for theft, my car is still totaled, and I would have burned any bridges I had with my stepdad. However, he does think it's completely fair for me to ask my stepdad to pay for his son's foolish behavior. I mean, it makes him put his money where his mouth is. If Isaac shouldn't pay, someone should, right? At the end of the day, even with the money I would get, I would still have lost my first JDM import. It's going to affect me, and my parents need to understand that. So I spoke to my mom and stepdad with that in mind, and even though my stepdad tried to beat around the bush about the car, he did have to concede that it should be paid back in some way. I agreed to it, and it was a verbal agreement between us. Hopefully, I get reimbursed for my Skyline. Isaac also got discharged from the hospital, but for obvious reasons, he isn't welcome back at my home. He's staying at a hotel with Mom and his dad, and hopefully will get off his ass and find a place to stay soon enough. Update 2. You won't believe the dirty trick my stepdad tried to pull on me. He said that he was willing to give me money out of my inheritance early, and that should apparently suffice. So basically, my mom and stepdad bought a lot of stock options together, which they did to give to me and Isaac when both of them passed. Taking the money from my stepdad now, anyways, means I'm cheated out of inheritance because my stepdad is thinking of cashing out half of the portfolio to pay for the car. I tried to explain why this made no sense, but he claims that it was the only way for him to pay for the car. I call BS on that, though, since he's super wealthy and plays the stock market like a pro. Even if he can't give me $80,000 up front, it's not impossible for him to arrange through installments. When I floated this idea to him, he refused it outright, and I knew that he was just playing me and never intended to give me my money in the right way. I said, listen, if you value your money over your relationship with me, then that's fine. Neither you nor your idiot son are ever going to show up around my house again. I also played my trump card. I was close friends with Isaac's professor from college. Ironically, both of us met at a car club meeting. I hadn't thought of using this connection in any way because it wasn't ethical at all, but I lost all patience. I implicitly threatened my stepdad with toppling Isaac's academic career, and that seemed to have some effect on him. He said that he'll figure something out, making a big deal about how heartless I was, but I simply said, I'll be waiting. Update 3. I've been paid back for the car. It seems to be underhanded and scummy work against my stepdad. I got the money, yeah, but they're still not welcome at my house. My mom can visit, but after I explained everything to her, she knows that she can't force me to be okay with my stepbrother and stepdad. NTA, it's clear that Isaac doesn't care about the consequences of his actions. His dad is doing everything to protect him and shift the blame. He's not in any serious condition, and a broken arm is a small price to pay for the kind of joyriding he was doing. NTA, man, that sucks. The R33 is such an underrated car, and they're only going to go up in value. I think you're absolutely in the clear to demand your money back for the investment you made. And your stepdad needs to understand that just giving you your inheritance early ain't the same thing. Next story. Background info. My 50s male father passed away in 2021. At the time, he has been in a long-term relationship with his girlfriend, let's call her L, 50s female, for 18 years. They were never married and were not common law married due to the fact that they didn't live together until about 4 months before his passing. Myself, 22, female, and my brother, 24, male, both have lived on our own for several years before my father's passing, meaning he could move his girlfriend and her own children, 23 female and 27 male, in without putting a strain on us. Once my father passed, we allowed Elle and her children to remain living in his house on the condition that the bills were still being paid, etc. Because my father did not have a will, all belongings and property were to be split between myself and my brother. Elle did not want us touching any of our father's belongings and refused to let us in the house. The basement had flooding issues that we knew about and offered to help fix. Elle refused all help and told us that she had it under control. The basement ended up being much worse than she told us. Mold growing on the walls and a lot of my father's possessions were ruined. She ended up changing the locks on the house and moving out without telling us. She also took a lot of my father's possessions without telling us. Here's where I may be the a-hole. There have been articles about my father going around listing Elle's children as my father's children. I never spoke on them when they first came out, even though it was very hurtful to read someone else being called my father's daughter. Recently, there was a new article, and I could no longer hold my tongue as everyone was reposting and sharing the article. Elle and her children have blocked me and refused contact. I posted a lengthy and heartfelt post about how Elle and her family destroyed my father's house and stole his belongings, all while claiming to be his real family. The post in question said, paraphrasing as it was long, I do not want to take away how much someone may have loved and cared for my father, but to claim him as your own father is incredibly disrespectful after the damage you've caused to this family. You refused help with the basement and let his prized possessions be ruined. Things that I could have to remember my father by are now ruined. Please do not speak on my father's behalf. This has caused a massive outburst from Elle and her children, calling me disgusting and saying I should have spoken to them privately first. Again, they have me blocked on most everything. I gave them my reasonings for the post and explained that I have done everything I could to help them while they just took and took from me. While I believe the post was harsh, and I never in a million years wanted to start Facebook drama because I think it's trashy, I believe that it was truthful. I was truly fed up with them spinning this narrative of being the victims. So AITA? NTA, but you need to get lawyers involved. She stole what rightfully belongs to you and your brother. She also damaged the home by refusing to fix the flooding. NTA, these people are a piece of work. Someone that would do that is really damaged. Have you talked to a lawyer yet? This needs to be done. You need to reclaim what you can of your father's past. I'm sorry to hear about your father. I lost mine recently and had some trouble with his ex, not my mom. I got what I wanted, and left her the garbage. NTA, and I'm so sorry for your loss. You have every right to tell your story, and it wasn't disrespectful. They sound like first-class parasites. I hope you got into the house and were able to recover some memories. Next story. My mom, 54, female, has a pretty severe hoarding problem. She's had it since before I was born. When I, 23, female, was a kid, the house was generally pretty cluttered and we had one or two rooms that were mom's rooms that we couldn't go into, but it was pretty livable. After my siblings and I moved out, she got a lot worse. Now she's living in 2 rooms in her house. Her bathroom and her living room, and even those, are full of trash. Whenever I visit her, I have to wear a mask because the smell in the house is so bad. Her bathroom is still functional, but only the toilet itself because the shower and sink are also full. The fact that my mom lives like this is bad enough, but she also has 4 cats. They aren't shelter cats, but rather cats that my mom rehabilitated, that she took in off the street. None of them are well taken care of. They don't have litter boxes, and she doesn't let them outside, so they just shit wherever. They all have fleas and probably worms because the house is so dirty, and she never takes them to the vet because she doesn't leave the house. I've spoken to my mom about this multiple times, but she won't listen to me. She took in her most recent cat just 2 months ago and is already trying to trap another cat that she found in her backyard. My sister, 19, female, recently came back from college and was just as horrified as I am. My mom is a lot closer to my sister than she is to me, so my sister and I decided that she would get my mom out of the house while I stole the cats. My sister convinced my mom to go with her to visit our brother, and while they were gone, I managed to catch all the cats. I took them to a shelter a couple of hours away so my mom wouldn't be able to find them. One of the cats turned out to have terminal cancer, so he ended up being put down, but the rest of them are currently up for adoption. My mom is livid. She has called me multiple times a day since this happened, over a week ago, demanding I tell her where I took her cats, and calling me a horrible person and a horrible daughter. She has also told all my siblings. Some are more angry at me than others, but most agree that what I did was wrong. Even the sister that helped me says she feels awful about it now and regrets doing it. At first, I didn't feel bad at all, but now I'm beginning to question my decision. AITA? NTA. I help rescue cats and get called into similar situations frequently. These hoarding situations where there are cat feces everywhere are extremely unhealthy for the animals, and they can develop severe physical and mental health issues if they are in these situations for too long. The reality is that if you hadn't done this, the health department or animal control would likely have been called in eventually, and the cats would likely be in much worse condition by that point. It's likely that you saved those 3 animals' lives and also saved the 4th a tremendous amount of suffering. On behalf of the cats, thank you for doing that. Dealing with hoarders is often a thankless task. Their mental illness cannot allow them to see the unhealthy reality of their situation. Sorry you had to go through condemnation for doing a good thing. I would strongly advise you to go one step further and call local pet stores, rescues, and shelters and warn them about your mom. It sounds like to date she has only invited in strays, but we found hoarders often like to replace the cats removed from their households quickly, and usually with even more of them. You'll want to make sure she's on no adopt lists locally to try to slow this process. Holy shit, I wasn't expecting that. Absolutely NTA. It really sucks that you found yourself in that position, but you did the right thing. Those poor cats were not being looked after, and I don't even think it's hyperbole to describe the situation as animal abuse. even if it was not intentional on your mom's part. I hope the cats found good homes, and I'd look into trying to get your mom some help too, if possible. She'll probably resist, especially after this, but as you've described it, that house has become an extremely unhealthy place for anyone to live in. NTA. This is not the ideal way to go about things, but given the previous conversations, it sounds like she was unable and maybe unwilling to properly care for them. It was the only way to ensure their safety. Your mom has every right to be upset about it. She's in the wrong, but you did invade her space and get rid of her pets. That's got to sting. It still had to be done. Overall, this will be healthier for your mom too. It's not healthy to be around feces, etc. No litter box is a huge issue. Stay tuned for more stories from our girl relationships.